Welcome back to Nick Lenz's movie review, episode number 62. This one I'm reviewing the seventh Star Trek film ever released, Star Trek Generations. Now, a lot of you probably will be scratching this away. This is the seventh film and it doesn't have the number 7 on it. Yeah, this has been a confusing thing for years. The angry video game nerd, believe it or not, get a chronologically confused thing. He mentioned this in his chronologically confused like one of those type of things where about numbering, because for some reason, and I have never heard an explanation from Paramount exactly why they did this, they dropped the number from the film, even though technically this is the first Next Generation film. It is also the seventh film overall of the whole series. Released in 1993, 2 years after the sixth film was released. Yep, and this came like almost immediately after the series finale of Next Generation. Actually, no, 1984, not 1983. It was over for about 3 years. Yes, I looked up and see exactly what was the film, what big sci-fi film was released this very year. And it's a Roland Emmerich film. The following film also does the same thing as well. Or have Roland Emmerich come out the same year. Which Roland Emmerich film came out the same year as this film? Why, it was Stargate. Yes, the film that started off the famous Stargate SG-1 franchise that existed for like I think about 12, 13 years. Lasted for a freaking long time, it did. And Emmerich himself, from what I heard, had nothing to do with the actual franchise itself. Nope, he never did. He never did at all. He had nothing to do with it at all. Well, he was pleased with his success, but he didn't like the fact they made the changes to the original film. But as for the case of this film, this was the first Star Trek I personally saw. I watched this from frequently on VHS tape many times over recorded off TV years ago. Eventually I did get on VHS and I got on DVD a couple times now. Yep. This film is set like not long after the series finale of Next Generation. Now I've heard some the production history thing is quite interesting, where they actually start working this like around the same time that they worked in the series finale of Next Generation, All Good Things. It's short for All Good Things Must Come to an End, but basically All Good Things. The episode that kind of wrapped up a plot point from the back in the pilot episode involving Q and the whole thing about humanity being on trial. Yeah. Q is nowhere in this film at all. As a matter of fact, Q is not even referenced at all. Basically, in this film, you have these characters. You have Picard, Riker, pretty much all the cast members they had at the end of the series. Yeah, Tasha got killed off toward the end of season 1, and Wesley Crusher, which, from what I heard, is described to be the second most annoying character in science fiction, gets removed 3.5 seasons in. Though I should point out, though, he does, even though he was I do agree, he was kind of annoying in season 1, he does get slowly better. And I've heard of the reasoning why Gene Roddenberry put him on the show, because they wanted to market to teenagers, so they brought a teenager on the show. Yes. And boy, oh boy, Roddenberry's things that he did with the show is like, wow, it's like so bizarre. Yeah. Some of the crazy stuff behind the scenes of the first couple years of Next Generation is one of the most interesting I've ever heard, of how much Gene Roddenberry's not right as a person to some people, and the fact he had a very sleazy lawyer. Yeah. And they kicked him, they basically moved him sort of in charge of Next Generation after the first 2 seasons. And the show began its golden age, starting with the 3rd season of the show up until season 6, and season 7 was basically the season they ran out of ideas. Now, there is actually a couple characters from the show who actually in this movie. Now, I have seen deleted scenes in this film. Oh yes, I've seen deleted scenes. There's about 4 or 5 of them. One of them happens to be an alternate ending to this film. I'll get to that soon. Yeah, and I'll also talk about deleted scenes when it comes to. Okay, the film starts off with seeing the Enterprise D christening. The Enterprise B christening. Well, it starts off with a champagne bottle in space. Now, this is maritime tradition of a champagne bottle basically being thrown at a ship and basically breaking. Yeah, this has been tradition for centuries. So it's unique the fact that the director of the film actually did this. And of course, then we see on the ship, we see Kirk, we see Scotty, we see Chekhov. And of course, Chekhov does something unusual. He acts like the ship's doctor. I'm thinking, that can't be right. Chekhov was a weapon. He was weapons officer. He had nothing to do with medicine at all. From what I've heard is that originally this part was supposed to go to DeForest Kelly, but he turned it down due to the small part. Heck, Nimoy in Scotty acts like Nimoy. He acts like Spock in this particular film. And there's a lead scene set prior to this where, and this is actually in, believe it or not, this is in the comic adaptation and the book adaptation where Kirk does a jump from the upper atmosphere, like higher than normal when people do parachuting. I have heard this is nothing unusual in Star Trek, known for taking higher risk. Yeah, this has even been shown even in the 24th century, so it's not a very new technique. It's kind of new at this point, but yeah, they basically jump from the top of the atmosphere and they go straight down. It's a much more bigger drop. Though, yeah, they go on the ship and they have the christening. They get on board the Enterprise, and now I should point out the Captain Enterprise B is played by the actor who was in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And the guy is a very somewhat incompetent captain. Yeah, yeah, they're basically just out of space dock, and apparently they didn't bother to have a medical staff on board for the launching of the ship, or have any photon torpedoes brought on board. I'm like, that is stupid. If you're going to launch a ship, be sure to have everything ready. I mean, yes, they did kind of reuse this kind of thing for Enterprise, but at least they bothered to have torpedoes on board. Unlike the Enterprise B, and of course, they answer the whole phrase of medical staff and where's torpedoes. Like, it won't be here till Tuesday. That is stupid. My gosh, this is stupid. Okay, so they respond to a distress call, and then you see the whole appearance of this energy release to the Nexus. Which, here's the thing about this particular thing with this particular film. The thing is never properly explained. Not even a novel's bar delve into what the heck the Nexus even is. It might be a hallucination. Heck, the energy, there's no origin of this damn thing. It just shows up for this one film. It's mentioned in. It shows up also in the novel adaptation and the comic adaptation. But in the case of anything beyond this, nope, there is nothing. They also have Whoopi Goldberg pop up in this scene, yeah, as Guinan, and from what is it, Lorien refugees. So this is roughly after, I would say, not long after the Borg destroyed their home world. And apparently she was on board along with Malcolm McDowell's character, Sauron, who appeared for this one film only. Yeah. Apparently he's bleeding. They don't really explain how the heck he's bleeding. And he gets knocked out, and yeah, that's last scene until a little bit later. Kirk basically acts very competently, so he decides to go down engineering. And apparently there's no engineering staff, and we're like, okay, what's a crew complement for Enterprise B? Seriously, what the heck is a crew complement? Oh, I should point out though, this opening scene takes place in 2295, roughly 2 years advance of the last movie. Yeah, and though this is also 5 years before the book Cast No Shadow, which revealed what Valeris was up to after the course of that film. It was set 7 years after that film. Yep, Kirk goes to engineering to activate the deflector to bust a hole in the ribbon because they're surrounded. But of course, this ribbon also causes heavy damage to the damn ship. Yeah, it blows like part of the ship and damages the deflector ray. And he used the deflector to simulate a torpedo blast, which was a whole ribbon right hold, and they basically go like maximum speed, like right after the ribbon, and then they go off and do whatever. There's a few novels actually explore what the heck they were up to between this and when Enterprise C was launched. As for the fate of this ship, this is something that's quite bizarre. Like, here's the thing. Online, they never properly explain, like, what the heck happened to the ship. It's rumored to be decommissioned, possibly destroyed, or something. It's never been properly explained exactly what the heck happened to this ship. Yes, there's a few lost years novels that explain what the heck happened to this. Oh, I should point out, though, the helmsman of this ship is the daughter of Hikaru Sulu, Demora. Fantastic. And I love Shatner's line in the film. It wouldn't be the Enterprise without Sulu at the helm. That's actually a really good line and a good reference to Kara Sulu, but he does make a physical appearance in the film. Though I do know in the novel adaptation, the original bridge crew show up for the scene. Though because of the whole money thing and the fact it was a small part, that's the reason why we get three. Shatner, of course, disappeared later on in the film. And they jump to present day, where you have the Wards promotion, which was a long overdue promotion because, well, he was when the series first started, lieutenant junior grade, and then by season 2, he's a full lieutenant, and he remains a full lieutenant like for the rest of the series until he gets promoted to lieutenant commander. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're on there for a while. Now, there is a scene they actually cut out from the film, and it's a scene where the Romulans, yes, the Romulans show up in this film, making their first. Well, technically, they did appear in the last one. It was one. It was one Romulan and a small group unnamed Romulans, but this is first significant appearance of them. But they cut the scene from the film, and I've never seen a deleted scene of this thing. So it's the scene where the Romulan ship basically attacks the station and kills almost the entire station complement, except for one person. They say the crew complement thing was 17. Okay, that's for the size of the station. The way they show in the film, it's not very surprising. Now, I've got to talk about the bridge of the Enterprise D. I love the bridge of the Enterprise D. It's one of my favorite bridges of all time when it comes to Star Trek. I mean, you have the captain's chair in the middle. On the left, you have the first officer. On the right, you have the counselor. There's two smaller chairs next to it. Behind him is this big oval, like, this overall arch thing that basically is the weapons console, and behind it's like science 1 and 2, engineering, stuff like that. Yeah, it's a great looking bridge. Design wise, they don't do anything about this bridge for the film. The only thing they did change for the bridge, and in the film they never get an explanation of why this is. If you notice in the film, if you watch the show for the Next Generation, the bridge is brightly lit. In the film, the lights are dimmed. Yes, as far as I can tell, there's been no explanations for this at all. Possibly due to they lost some power recently. In the film, there's never an explanation for this at all. And as far as I'm sure some people may have brought. As far as I can tell from one review I've seen of it from the Star critic, he didn't even bring up like why is the Enterprise D bridge so dimly lit? You can barely see anything on this bridge. Yes. It's particularly very weird, and of course, eventually everybody gets back on board. And of course, I should point out though they used to have something that basically affects Picard's, let's just say his mood for the rest of the film, is that he gets a message from Earth that something bad is happening. He doesn't explain it too much later. That apparently his brother and his nephew were killed, burned to death in the fire. I'm like, even watching this film even watching it many times over the years. I still tend to wonder, like, why the heck would you do that for? Why the heck would you kill off two characters who only appear for one episode? By the way, I should point out that the actor who played Picard's brother, he played a German officer in the series Winds of War and War Remembrance. Her two miniseries adapted from Herman Wouk's novels, really long novels, mind you. But this guy usually plays German characters. In the show, he plays a Frenchman. And here's the thing: Patrick Stewart is British, and he's playing a Frenchman. Yeah, it's particularly very bizarre. Yeah, but I think now I do agree with the opinion that killing off Rene and Robert, Picard's brother, was a mistake. I do agree that was definitely a mistake. I'm kind of glad they didn't show it on screen. But the whole thing of killing them off was an absolute stupid idea. Though I have heard one of the writers who introduced them from the Aftermath episode from Best of Both Worlds, they introduced him. He also wrote this film as well. He thought, if I figure so, I introduce these characters, I'll kill them off. Okay? I don't really get why in the world this happened. And of course, they mentioned also later in the later scene when they revealed this, that apparently Deanna Troi met Picard's brother and did they met Picard's brother and wife? Did she possibly meet his nephew? As far as I know, Renee never appeared after that one episode. He wasn't even mentioned. I think Verbera was mentioned once after his initial appearance on the series. But as for Renee, no, he wasn't. As a matter of fact, Renee never appeared in the novels, from what I remember. I'm sure he may have, but I have no idea. Yeah. And then we get on board the station. We sort of search all the place. Very typical. Also, there's one thing I've got to mention here. The uniforms. Oh my gosh, the freaking uniforms. Okay. Apparently, they thought, though, that the X-Ration would not work for the films. So they basically borrowed the costumes from D Space Nine. So they have characters who swap between these various costumes for no explained reason a whole film. I should point out, though, the only characters who actually stay in X-Ration uniforms the entire film is Dr. Crush and Worf. Yeah, because you have in the film like Picard's like wearing like the next generation where it's black in the shoulders and red like in front and the back, or at least Deep Space Nine where it's like red or like whatever color is like here and almost everything else is black down here. Yeah, it swaps back and forth. Now, in the film, there's no explanation for this at all. They just happily jump through suits, no problem. Yep, and they do show a dead Romulan on board the space station. One dead Romulan, and you know he's Romulan because the pointy ears and green blood. Oh yeah, and the uniform is dead giveaway. Yep. Spock makes appearance in the film. Yeah, he appears in this film, and he appears in Nemesis. Yeah, he appears for 2 films. This particular cat didn't really appear that much in Next Generation. His first appearance was in Data's Day, an episode where Brent Spiner narrated the whole episode, which features the wedding of Keiko and Miles O'Brien. Fantastic. It was a brief scene, but it was great. But that was the first time Spock appeared in the series, and he appeared frequently over the course of the entire series. And this was his first film appearance. He will return for the last of the series, but for some reason he wasn't in the previous 2 films. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there was no explained reason why this cat wasn't available. And of course they have the chip that goes in Data's head, which they changed the shape of this damn thing. From the show was about this big. In the movie, it's basically this big. No explanation for that at all. It's a minor plot hole that the movie doesn't bother to explain at all. And I've heard like maybe one Linkara brought up in his review of how the emotion changed shape. Yeah, there's no explanation why it changed. It just did. Also, apparently, not only the bridge is not only poorly lit, but also the rest of the ship is poorly lit as well because they showed 10 forward, which was very bright in the show. And I'm glad they showed 10 forward for Enterprise D because they never show it for E at all. Yeah, E's 10 forward has never been shown in live action. It's mentioned in the novels where they call the Happy Bomb Club, but in the case of the films, God forbid we show 10 forward. Yeah. We see Guinan again in this film. The scene. We also see Guinan's quarters for the first time. Yeah, that is something that never appeared in the show. Because the only time we see Guinan is either one in 10 forward or like one time she appeared in the Magic Meeting Room, or at least in the observatory, which does make appearance in this film briefly. Picard's office makes appearance in this film. Yeah. So these following things that appear frequently on the show did appear in this film: the bridge, the captain's ready room, engineering, sick bay, and 10 forward. The 5 usual places they show frequently in the course of Next Generation did appear in this film. They did not show, as far as I remember, none of the officers' quarters are shown in this film. I mean, they do show one. I think they show Data's quarters in this film. But nobody else's. Not Picard's quarters. Nobody else's. Yep. And of course, after they do searching, because they find Soren, you see Picard's meeting with him for at least one brief scene, and then Picard doesn't see Soren again until toward the end of the film. And then, of course, they have to get back Data and Geordi and look for the special radiation. And they do find it behind like a panel. And apparently Data goes nuts because the motion is in his head. And they find this solar probe, which later on Soren somehow magically beam on board. They don't show him beaming on board. He does get, now they mentioned previously he does get permission to go back to the station because of an experiment he had to do. But then they show apparently off-screen apparently took the time to fire a solar probe at the sun and causing a supernova. And they describe it as a level 12 shockwave. And they try to beam everyone off board. And they apparently don't mention they don't have Geordi with them, but they have Riker and Worf go retrieve Geordi and Data. They get Data, but not Geordi. And then, of course, Picard's like, Warp 1 engage, which is a phrase he frequently said in the show, along with make it so. Yeah, those two phrases he said in like pretty much like almost every episode he appeared in the entire series. Yep. They do show later on Geordi on board a ship. Which ship is he on? A Klingon ship that belongs to Dora sisters. Those of you curious though, who the heck are the Dora sisters? They were two sisters who were recurring characters on the Next Generation TV show who never got their plot wrapped up on the show, but Lore did, not them. Excuse me. Their plot thread starts way back from the episode Since the Father, which also has the debut of the character Doros, who appears in this episode and Reunion, which is also segments not only him, but also Belor, I think it's pronounced the name. She's also Alexander's mother, who is the mother of Worf's only known child ever in the history of Star Trek. And he was quite possibly the first person, over the course of a TV show, to have his own child. Though the character himself will appear a couple episodes on Deep Space Nine. Yeah, Doros himself will be killed, and the whole thing with Sins of the Father is that Doros accused Worf's father Moog of treason, even though that Doros' own father was a traitor. The other reason why Doros himself doesn't get chastised, Klingons have this thing where since the father passed on to the children, and apparently they would just the Klingons would disown them, and so they do the ceremony for Worf while keeping his brother in the council. As a matter of fact, his brother, this is not even mentioned this whole thing, not even his son. His brother appears like once in Deep Space Nine, and that's it. Alexander himself, well, he appeared frequently in the novels. Yeah, of course, he later gets added to the House of Martok in his debut episode in Deep Space Nine. And he pops up one other time after that in season, I believe it was in the same, I think it was season 6, where he pops up for Worf and Jazia's wedding, and that's all you see the character. Yeah, they also show up in the third time that mentioned the whole thing with the Klingons, which falls about Gowron. Yeah, that was the second time Gowron appeared on the show. Appeared in the two-part Redemption, which is used to Dora sisters, and they appeared as sort of recurring threats, recurring characters of the rest of the series. They even popped up for one episode of Deep Space Nine because, well, they gotta have the shows connected somehow. So have the Dora sisters appear for one episode. They even had Alexander Troy appear for one episode, which that was quite unusual. They also had Dr. Bashir appear for one episode of Next Generation, which I heard that the actress who played Jazida, she wanted to appear on Next Generation, but Dr. Bashir had to, for some reason. Yeah. Now, in the film, they don't really say, like they don't really give an explanation of how they know these people are, like, how they know they're involved. That was explained in a deleted scene. Yes, a deleted scene explained that plot thread. Yep. And, of course, they meet Dora sisters later, and when they have this whole expression of, like, of course, there's a substitute weapons officer because Worf's not on board. It says, Captain, a Klingon ship is to click out the port bow, and Picard's like, what? He doesn't get like it's like a bit of a dull surprise reaction. Yeah, he's like, what? I mean, normally when something like shocking like that, usually with a little more reaction, but Stewart apparently didn't get much of a reaction. He's like, what? Yeah, it's not like really much of a reaction. I'm sure he would have been upset, like a little bit surprised that the Klingons are here. The Klingons are sort of not exactly a really big threat because they're still allies at this point. This is well before the famous Way of the Warrior 2-hour episode from Deep Space Nine. And of course they go off, they go Viridian 3, and of course everyone's chasing them there, and they reveal Sauron's plan, which is to alter the energy ribbon to go through Viridian so he can reunite his family. They go Viridian 3, Picard beams on the planet, and then the Klingon ship and the Enterprise D basically start a shooting match. Though the Klingon ship does a lot of damage to the Enterprise D. Like, oh boy, like a ton of damage. Like damaging the warp nacelle. Like, Yes, the Enterprise D would damage the show, but not to this extent. Like, oh my gosh, it had never damaged to this extent where part of the ship is like heavily damaged. And so after they destroyed the ship with one shot, yeah, where apparently the plasma cores was connected to their cloaking device were defective, and that's the reason why the ship was decommissioned. Because part of the cloaking device wasn't working. You could have just replaced the cloaking device. Nope, you could just do that, but nope, you had to just, well, do that, I guess. So they have Data basically activate the cloaking device, fire one photon torpedo at the ship, and yeah, also point out that the Enterprise does fire back once, though due to the fact the ship basically got shielded. Yeah, that was the. In case you're wondering why they went for phasers first instead of going for immediately for photon torpedoes, because that was the standard for next generation. Like anytime they would fire their weapons, it's always phasers first, and the torpedoes the last a last minute weapon. Eventually, the ship is destroyed, and I should point out that the destruction they used for the Enterprise, for the clan ship, it's reused stock footage from MSF Country, which they would reuse frequently in. Well, they reuse it in Next Generation for not redemption. They did reuse it a few times in Deep Space Nine, the destruction of that ship, anyways. And of course, we have the basically like everything seems to be perfectly normal, and all of a sudden like something's happened with a warp core about to explode, like coolly like warp core's about to have a meltdown, and they all pretty much successfully evacuate the pod section. Now I should point out though, this is the whole thing. They had the sequence of the Enterprise D splitting into two pieces. This is something they did in the show. They only did this roughly like 3 times in the show. They did this in the pilot episode. They did like 1 episode of season 1, and they did Best Both Worlds Part 2, and that was it. I have heard that the reason why they didn't do it very much in the show because it was expensive to do, and this was the last special time they did in the film. This was the 4th time they did it. They split it off. Pod section explodes, which caused the ship to basically crash on Viridian 3. You have Data say his infamous line, "Oh," I'm not going to say the word, but he says that word. Ship crashes on the planet. Apparently Picard doesn't notice at all, because he's off on the other side of the planet, where it's all desert. And he landed in the freaking forest of all things of Viridian 3. Yeah, of course you have Picard just doing his thing of trying to convince Soren, tapping a force field, eventually gets to the force field through a rock that's blocked by the force field. And of course he gets around, and Picard himself is a terrible fighter. Yeah, he sucks at fighting. And yet the actor is Dream Boxer. Go figure. Yeah, the only time he actually hit anybody was when he punched a Varanki in the face. The guy sucks at fighting, so he's pitiful at fighting a guy who's older than he is. And then, of course, Ribbon comes through, and then, of course, they got the planet, they go to the Nexus. They have a vision of the future where he's with somebody. I don't think it's Beverly Crusher, per se. It's somebody. I'm not sure who it was supposed to be. I don't remember who the character was. Even though people want to be Beverly Crusher. But here's the thing. When Gene Roddenberry was alive, apparently he did not want Picard to hook up with Dr. Crusher for some reason. Even though fans did want that. And in fact, these two had great chemistry with each other. Though, I will point out what happened to the after events of the 4th film. Yeah, apparently they had kids. And, of course, they have Christmas illusion. And he goes off and finds Kirk, who's in Nexus. From him, it's basically he had just gotten there. And they talk for a while. They compare notes. I mean, this is a great scene. I love Shatner and Patrick Stewart's chemistry. It's one of the best things about this whole film. And then, of course, they have their thing about meeting Antonia, which I should point out, though, Linkara pointed out, though, why couldn't this be Carol Marcus? Yeah, why couldn't this be Carol Marcus? Why did it be some woman we've never seen before? Yeah, so they go off and they go to Viridian 3. We replay the scene of the Enterprise D crashing the planet. It's like reusing. It's like going through. I highly doubt they basically did the scene again. They probably just stock footage at this point of the film. They have Picard doing pretty much the same thing before, and of course he confronts Sauron. He's like, but it's Kirk. He's like, who the hell are you? And then Picard speaks like, he's James T. Kirk. He's like, don't you read history? Yeah. And of course they get a brief scuffle. He jumps off. And of course they got the platform which was used to destroy the sun. and like, you get the platform, I'll get Soren. Like, Shatner's like, Kirk's like, I'll go get Soren, and you go to the platform. Of course, they eventually like get to the platform later, and of course, Kirk basically is a damn better fighter than Picard. He basically fights him like, he points his like very weird sci-fi gun at him, where apparently barrel bends over for some reason. I think is weird. The first time you see this gun is when he meets up with Data on board that space station. Yep. And then like Picard attacks him, and of course knocks the gun out of his hand. The gun basically disappears. Somehow he gets it back, and then of course, well, he falls off, held by a rope, and eventually they get the thing back. Like, it's on a bridge, and of course he gets shot at the bridge, and of course Kirk gets it, activates it. Picard goes over, locks the controls, and they reveal a little bit later. And then Soren's like, get away from those controls, runs away. The thing explodes with a thing about to lift off and kills Soren. And what happens to Kirk? Well, the bridge basically kills him. And of course, they do mention there was a minor callback to the fifth film where Kirk's like, I'll die alone, and yet he dies next to a bald Frenchman. Well, a bald Frenchman with a British accent. Yep. And he dies, and you probably wonder, okay, you have his brief log, and then gets back, and Picard gets back to the ship. Now, I wondered this for years, like, how the heck get from there to the bridge? What happened? Was a scene cut there? Yes, there was. A scene where Worf showed up in a damaged shuttlecraft, and Picard's like, jump with the Klingons? And Worf's like, you can say that, sir. Of course, they fly up, they go on the ship, and they have another scene from the lead scene here where Dr. Crusher's coordinating all the evacuation, all the rescue efforts, but the scene they kept in here was Deanna trying Data looking for Spot. They find Spot, and they get off the ship, and then of course we have Picard and Riker search for something, and Picard picks something in the series. It was actually priceless. This particular statue, if anyone's watched the series, it's from the episode, I think it was like The Quest. I think it was about the $1 billion puzzle. This pops up again, and it's basically used, he just tosses away to get this photo album he had shown once before in the film. He wants to keep that photo album because why not? It's his. And so they have a good conversation between the two of them, like where he says the line, times like a predator stalks us all our lives, or times like a fire. That's what Picard. And of course, Picard's like, he says the line of, well, number one, we're all immortal. And Riker's like, speak for yourself, sir. I plan to live forever. It's like, he's like, hey, that would be the last ship to carry the Enterprise. And makes them Enterprise E. Of course, they beat up the ship, and they have all the ships go off, and that's the end of the film. It's a good film, but man, seeing the lead scenes in this film, like, man, they could have just kept the stuff and not cut it out. Yes, it's like something was missing here, but yeah, it's a good film. In my opinion, probably the second best film in the entire of the 4 Next Generation films. Yeah, but you get my thoughts on First Contact in the next video, okay? Well, next video for this series, okay? But until the next video, bye.